and chili is a food that is, very conducive to experimentation. So,
Totally.
it's good to do something like that.
Is it
Maybe
technically a stew?
Fuck, man, I don't know.
I think technically it's a stew.
Welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode. Exciting episode of The Purpose Driven Dude.
Yes.
I am one of your hosts, Brad.
And I'm the other host, Alex.
Excellent. And we come to you to bring you the good word of Jeffrey Lebowski and the religion of dudism.
Yep, it's proudly the slowest growing religion in the world.
And legally recognized in I think I've been saying 13 states. I just kind of hope that maybe I say it enough that it's true. That's kind of how the truth works in this country, right?
Yeah, it's my truth. Yeah. So,
Yeah, it's one of my alternative facts.
Yeah. Correct until proven otherwise. I feel.
Exactly. Yeah, if somebody wants to, get on Twitter and correct me on that, feel free.
But yeah, it's
just like my opinion, man.
Yeah, get off my junk.
And so we are here to discuss the various tenets of dudism, which are often based on Taoism, or Zen Buddhism, or transcendentalist philosophy, or whatever the hell you want it to be.
Yeah, as long as it's chill and as long as it's not hurting anyone along the way, I think that's pretty much what you need.
Yeah, so. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy the whole gall darn human comedy that we found ourselves in somehow. At
a certain point, you just gotta laugh, man. I think that's what it comes down to.
That's exactly it. And so hopefully we get a few good chuckles out while we're doing this podcast.
We'll try, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. Who knows?
Who knows? Somebody out there finds me funny.
Or at least amusing enough to continue to listen.
God, I hope. All right. Well, in that case, I guess we should just we'll get into it here.
I think you're kicking us off, right? With
Yes. Going to kick us off with another episode of Notably Doodly.
The most Notably Doodly segment on the show.
Yeah, it is indeed. Mm-hmm. There's no lie there. So. For Notably Doodly, I have chosen for this week to bring everyone the actions and the story of Mr. Jim Kenney. Mm-hmm. Jim Kenney is currently the mayor of Philadelphia. He actually was a member of Philadelphia City Council for 23 years, serving as a councilman at large before he was elected as mayor in 2015.
Okay.
He entered into the spotlight this past Friday, which I guess would be, the 28th? 27th. 27th, right. It's Monday. Ha ha!
Little peek behind the curtain there.
Yeah, exactly. Parting the kimono, if you will.
The bathrobe.
Parting the robe, if you will. So Mr. Kenney has received some publicity over the last year and a half for being an outspoken opponent to the agendas of President Donald J. Trump.
The executive branch.
Yeah, and so he actually has been extremely outspoken maintaining that Philadelphia will continue to act as a sanctuary city towards immigrants to this country, despite the fact, the threats that that sanctuary cities would stop receiving federal funding. He has been very steadfast in this, and he actually has used quite a bit of he's used quite a bit of logic to just like shoot down a lot of the requests that that the current administration has made.
I mean, it doesn't take that much logic.
Yeah, but it's been part of his ideology, and something that has made him, fairly popular amongst a lot of people in Philadelphia. And this was just reiterated on the 28th. When it was announced that Philadelphia, through Mr. Kenney's legislation and influence, is going to be ending a major contract with ICE, so immigration enforcement, and what they're going to be doing is they're going to be cutting off ICE's access to local police records, which have long been used by ICE to almost seemingly arbitrarily pick people that would then be targeted for questioning on their immigration status. And Mr. Kenney had some great quotes here. Personal favorite of mine being, "If I could abolish ICE, I would. But we can abolish this contract, and we are."
Nice.
He also said, just because a person's name is Lopez or some other Hispanic name, you're going to go to their house and take people out of their home. I mean, it just makes no sense. And I never want that to be a part of this.
Excellent.
So that contract will be officially null and void as of this fall. ICE will no longer have access to Philadelphia's police records and will no longer be able to use that information to basically arbitrarily track down brown people and target them for possible deportation, despite the fact that they've done nothing to incur the wrath of law enforcement.
Most excellent, man.
So, just a couple of other achievements by Mr. Kenney. He actually is known to have started a feud with Chris Christie, which just made me so happy.
The best possible feud.
New Jersey Governor Chris Christie.
Former New Jersey governor.
I guess, yeah. So he, I guess Chris Christie is a self-proclaimed fan of the Dallas Cowboys, because who gives a shit? And he's frequently known to slam the Philadelphia Eagles, who are one of the Cowboys' biggest rivals, for anyone who's not familiar.
This is news to me.
Christie, it's like, again, who gives a shit? And certainly not anybody who's listening to this podcast, I can all but guarantee.
I would assume. I mean, look, if you're a football fan, let us know.
Let us know. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, no, this was news to me. But apparently, Christie actually generalized Philadelphia fans at one point, calling them, quote, angry, awful people.
Mean like him.
Yeah, and said that Citizens Bank Park, which is the home of the Phillies, is, quote, not safe for civilized people. To which, Kenney was actually on a local sports talk radio program, and his response was, quote, he's got the biggest L on his forehead of anyone in the country. He ran for president for one hot mess minute, and then when that was over, he was moondogging Trump, thinking he was going to get a big job. Now I think he's just bitter and has got nowhere to go. Who's going to hire him? I just think he's just done. bullies always lose, and he's a bully.
Well, and that ain't just the truth, man. I mean, Chris Christie, I still, one of the things I got the biggest chuckle out of back in the election cycle was those memes flying around with him, like, in the background of, like, Trump speeches, just sort of, like, staring off into the mid-distance.
Yeah, just, like, my favorite being the one where they put the, the sousaphone solo over it.
I was a fan of Hello Darkness, My Old Friend over it. Like,
yeah.
It's just so good.
Yeah, and
because he just looks so forlorn, and like he knows like the deal with the devil he's signing in that moment, but the fact that he got like nothing from any of that fucking ass kissing, just like just like magnifique.
Yeah, no, it was a beautiful bit of Schadenfreude.
Well, this does kind of kill the joke I was building towards, though, because I was going to ask you what he thought of the fucking Eagles, and that just sort of like torpedoes my joke. But
well, Chris Christie just hates the fucking Eagles, man.
Yeah, he's okay. It's okay to be wrong about a thing, I guess, but don't go around calling them angry, awful people. What a fucking dickhole, man. Like, I hate that guy.
Also, Jim Kenney, he is a graduate of 2 Catholic schools, but he is actually engaged in numerous feuds with the leadership of the Archdiocese of Philadelphia.
I wonder why.
Kenney has mobilized numerous gay rights legislations during his time in Philadelphia City Council, which was met with criticism from Catholic leadership.
Okay, whatever.
And the most predictable thing of all time. But apparently there was a very beloved faculty member at a Catholic university who came out as gay and was very promptly fired. And in a story for the Philadelphia Inquirer, he actually called Kenney actually accused the Archdiocese of being consisting of, quote, cowardly men who orchestrated the firing, and said, quote, if you're a church official and you feel that strongly that this woman and her partner are such a threat to society, stand up and say so. And said the speaking of the Archdiocese, don't care about people. It's about image and money. Pope Francis needs to kick some ass here.
Well, and dude, yeah, like, that's the weird thing, right, is that, like, when you're looking, this has been my overall impression, like, and I'm not Catholic, but this has been my overall impression
about the furthest thing from.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was raised partially, at least, Lutheran, so, like, people who were directly opposed to Catholicism.
Yeah, I was about to say, literally, the opposite.
Like, quite the opposite. Well, but
Ein Minuten bitte.
The whole bit from Eddie Izzard. But no, like, and that's the thing, is, like, my impression of the Catholic kind of, like, hierarchy, so, like, recently has been very much, like, Pope Francis kind of being generally cool at the top, and then like everybody kind of like directly below him into like the Archdiocese
all
level.
The middle management,
just being the fucking worst, like ongoing child molestation scandals and like this kind of bullshit.
Some
like
motherfucker just had to resign like this weekend because of that bullshit.
And like, so I can only assume that these ongoing resignations and everything are at least partially a result of Francis and maybe kind of like the higher ups in the Vatican, like doing exactly that, like kicking some ass.
Yeah. One can hope.
I would like to hope, and I'd like to think that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not just them kind of like falling under the weight of their own scandal.
Yeah. That's, it's like it's time to clean house.
Yeah. And like, this is just proof to the pudding. Like, I mean, I'm glad to see he's taken such a firm stance on these guys, and like at this point I feel like give him no quarter, man. Like, they've systematically hidden these abuse scandals from like the news and the public and continue to protect people who are systematically abusing or have abused children. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, just go right at him, if you ask me.
Yeah, like, no, exactly. Take those motherfuckers down.
And it's not to say anything, and I'd like to make sure I'm clear on this, it's not to say anything about people like the faithful people who are Catholic, who go to church on Sunday.
No, there are plenty of good Catholics in the world.
Yeah, like, and it's not a dig at them. It's like, dude, your fucking like mid-management needs some fucking like spring cleaning.
Yeah.
Like,
But yeah, no, and my friend Jim Kenney seems to agree.
Yeah.
So for Notably Doodly, I nominate Mayor Jim Kenney. Mm-hmm. I believe he is doing the dude's work out there, and seems to be doing it pretty handily right now.
He's a fan of the Eagles and not a fan of pederasts. So there you go.
Hey, you know what? I'll take 1 out of 2.
Yeah. Good on you, man. Good on you.
All right. Well, cheers, Jim.
Cheers
Keep
to
up
Jim.
the good work. All right.
Well, that brings us then, awkwardly at least, into our main topic of the day.
Oh, it would have been fine.
It's fine.
That was fine. That was a perfectly fine transition.
It's not a problem. So our main topic this week is kind of getting right back to sort of the root of the whole conversation to a degree. We're going to talk about
Remember how this is a religion podcast.
Right. We'd like to reiterate that this is in fact a religion and spirituality podcast.
You may not have believed it after the last 3 or 4 episodes, but you know.
I mean, we dig kind of heavy into some history. We like to try to be as thorough as we can be anyway on this podcast.
Right. And,
Which, we were fun.
We're also just having some fun. So,
well, and pointing out great dudes, I think, is actually fairly key.
Oh no, it's very key to the whole thing. So those ones aside,
I'll continue until morale improves. But yeah, so our main topic today is the Tao or Tao. I tend to go with more of a D sound when I say it.
I think that's closer to the actual etymology. When it comes down to it.
And I slaughter most of my attempts at foreign languages, so it's the closest I can get anyway to it.
I think the Tao is a little bit more anglicized.
Definitely. So Taoism versus Taoism.
Yeah. If I understand correct, I may be wrong, and someone feel free to correct me on this. I was not a religious studies major in college. I was an actor, so I'm just an ignorant shit who repeats the words that other people wrote for me to say.
Acting.
Yeah.
I love all you actors out there.
I love my fellow actors, but
look, we live in LA. I know more actors than any other profession in this town.
I know more actors than people. From what I understand, though, I believe the Tao is actually the closer to the original pronunciation.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to probably use them interchangeably.
More or less.
So apologies if it riles you or whatever. But yeah, so we're going to talk about the Tao, one of the kind of foundational ideas behind Taoism or Taoism, which in turn is central to Dudism.
Exactly.
In many ways. And it's a difficult thing to define, and I think intentionally so.
It specifically can't be defined.
Yes, that is actually chapter 1 of the Tao Te Ching. Now, I'd like to preface this by saying I marked off about a dozen chapters. I'm not going to read all of them.
Oh, thank God! We'll be here all night.
I took some notes, but to your point, that's literally.
I have work tomorrow.
We've all got places to be, but no, the Tao is intentionally undefined and undefinable. It's sort of and the Tao Te Ching spends a lot of time comparing it to things, but in every sense, every chapter that you come across, the one consistency across the entire book is that it is defined in conflicting terms. To understand it, you have to first unlearn how to relax. In order to experience the Tao, you have to first unlearn how to unlearn. It is intentionally vague and amorphous.
Yeah, I mean, I believe one of my favorite things was somebody going through some of the tenets of the philosophy surrounding the Tao, which states it cannot be defined by human terms. It is not a thing, yet it is everything guiding life. Its effects are glimpsed in every action of the natural world. It is not a tangible thing so much as it is as it may be regarded as a system of guidance.
Yeah, I mean, and it should be clear to state that, so the rough translation of Tao is way or path,
route, road, doctrine.
At various points throughout the Tao Te Ching, they
Principle.
describe it. They describe it in these ways. They also use to kind of bring it back to Wu Wei, which is another core tenet. It's described as like a waterway or a river. It's got this sort of like naturalistic sort of flowing tendency, and the idea of it is that it's kind of like the Force, right? I think the Force actually is probably one of the most like
Tao's made of midi-chlorians.
Well, okay, midi-chlorians aside, but it's the idea because fuck that shit. And
You should have
like,
seen that one coming.
I should have. But like, if you want like probably the most well-known kind of like Western analogy to Tao, it's the Force. It's kind of like this sort
Empire Strikes Back Force.
Definitely Empire Strikes. It's the Force that like binds us and penetrates us and kind of pulls the universe together and permeates every aspect of creation or life or the universe.
Should definitely point out to people who are unfamiliar with the tenets of Taoism that the Tao is not God.
No. Should be clear.
Should be very, very clearly stated that the Tao is not God. There are actually deities that are worshipped in traditional Taoism, but they, like everything else in the entire fucking universe, are actually guided by the Tao.
And are like kind of elements of the Tao.
They are elements of the Tao, and they're actually much more akin to like what you might think of deities like in like Greek or Norse mythology, to give like a Western example, which are these like almost semi-mortal beings. Like they can die, they can, like transcend into different planes, but they're basically like a human concept that has been given these.
Right, and my impression was almost kind of like I think how most at least Westerners perceive like the Buddha, right? This sort of transcendent person.
Yeah, like a human that's transcended into like a almost like a deification.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this a little bit on a previous episode where like there's kind of like three distinct but usually somewhat intertwined kind of practices around Taoism. There's like the religious, like kind of like capital R religious practice of Taoism, right, which venerates these sort of figures like Lao Tzu and these other people as deities and worships them. There's the philosophical backing, which I think is really where we lie more on the spectrum of things.
Oh, definitely. I feel like maybe we should have titled this episode "Basics of Taoism."
It's very I mean it's almost we're going to take a real rough shot at it.
Yeah.
But then there's also like the kind of physical expression of Taoism, which is usually expressed through Taoist martial arts, Tai Chi, kind of
yoga,
and, ways of like living and stuff,
Yeah, and like kinetic meditation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So just to try to clarify our terms a little bit, and this the first chapter where it talks about. I made this note, so it's talking about how you can't directly observe the way, you can't, but you can try to see it in everyday life. You can try to see it in the things that you do and the people you experience and all these different things. It actually reminded me, and this is going to be my probably nerdiest sort of dives. It reminds me a lot of the cave allegory, the Plato's cave.
Oh my God! Oh wow! Okay, that might be your nerdiest dive.
It's a deep cut, but if you're not familiar with the cave allegory,
oh boy, the cave pun. There.
Yeah. I mean, like, this is a deep cut. But if you're not familiar with the cave allegory, it's the basic idea that Plato put out there that basically said like what we observe and what we see in the world are just kind of mere reflections of like an ideal version of those things, as though the ideal whatever it is casting like a shadow on a cave wall, and like we can never really observe like kind of the true nature of things. So it actually I think ties in quite nicely with the idea of Tao. Totally different.
There are a lot more similarities than differences in a lot of these philosophies.
True, and I mean they're very different for sure. I mean Platonic ideals are far shot away from Taoism, but but just to give a very brief overview of that idea. But yeah, so it's described, again, like there's water symbolism involved with it pretty regularly throughout the Tao Te Ching.
Kind of going back to our discussion of Wu Wei in, was that the first episode?
First episode, yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
We're doubling around.
Or, oh, dude, I guess. Oh, Jeffrey. So yeah, it kind of goes back to that precept of Wu Wei, where in order to glimpse the Tao, one has to employ this naturalistic approach to life,
Totally.
and has to achieve, in order to achieve true enlightenment and true peace, and to achieve oneness with the Tao. You have to allow it to guide your life and your actions without striving for it, so to speak.
Right. It's anachronistic. Well, and it's something that you see a lot, and we've talked about already a little bit, this idea of
dualities.
Yeah, and I mean, like, this is exemplified by, and most Westerners know this with the symbol, right? That's
the yin and the yang.
Yeah, yin and yang, or yin and yang symbol. It's embracing the dualities, but also, like, and we're going to talk, I think, a little more in depth on the idea of virtue later, but being able to kind of take for lack of a better way of putting it, like a holistic approach. Like, you're not looking at things as black and white, good and bad. It's again, it comes back to the idea from Star Wars, right? Like, a Jedi does not deal in absolutes, only a Sith does, right? Like, you try to have a flexibility in thought, a flexibility in mindset about things.
Sure.
You know.
But the Sith look cool.
They look rad. Well, so do the Jedi, though. I mean, they're pretty cool.
I don't know, but Darth Maul just looked so fucking cool.
Darth Maul was, like, the only good thing about that movie.
Hey, Liam Neeson was good with what they gave him.
Look, I still maintain the best thing about that movie is the lightsaber fight at the end. Like,
it was the last good lightsaber fight in the series until the new ones.
This is very true. Yeah. Sadly.
Yeah. I'll go on a whole rant about stage fighting other time.
We'll have to do an episode on Star Wars too at some point.
Yeah,
I mean, it'll be.
And then you'll hear me complain about the very poor fight choreography in those second two prequels.
We like, I think everybody in the fucking world now has strong opinions about Star Wars.
Yeah, so that's true. To quote Brian Posehn, yeah, those prequels were my Vietnam.
Naboo, still just in Naboo. Oh, Jesus.
Damn it, I'm still in Naboo.
Oh,
man. Okay, the Tao.
Right. So back to the Tao. So yeah, and so you've probably kind of noticed here, like, it's one of the sort of things that by its very nature is hard to define, and it's hard to almost kind of talk about, right?
Impossible to define. It's hard to talk about. It's impossible to define.
Yeah, and like, it's one of the sort of things, like, I mean, even the Tao Te Ching, I mean, intentionally so, kind of leads you around.
Well, you were kind of talking about those Platonic connections. It reminds me now of transcendentalist philosophy, which is something I espouse a lot. And the very concept that with American transcendentalism, they espouse the concept of that God is not definable by human terms, because in order to define God by human terms, then you inherently limit God. To say God exists means that God came into existence and therefore must one day pass out of existence, which completely defies the whole concept of an ever-present, omnipotent, and eternal God. So, it just kind of talking about those parallels a little bit more. It's interesting how it kind of seems to pop up in various philosophies.
I mean, that logical fallacy actually is one of the funnier parts of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, too, where like the Babelfish basically is used by people to disprove the existence of God. In like the funniest, like, kind of bit of like roundabout logic you've ever heard.
Oh man, we're gonna have to do Douglas Adams sometime.
Oh, absolutely, man.
All right. Well, enough brainstorming. Let's get back to the subject.
Yeah, but so I think if you're talking about putting into practice or putting into study, there's a chapter of the Tao Te Ching which speaks directly to this. It's one of the ones I bookmarked. It's Tao Te Ching 41. And it speaks directly to kind of like what a good student of the Tao looks like and what kind of principles they espouse. And I'll just read a little bit of this one. So when the best student learns about Tao, they work hard to put it into practice. When mediocre students learn about Tao, they practice it only half-heartedly. When the worst students learn about Tao, they laugh out loud. This is how we know it is truly Tao, when the dull find it dumb.
God, I love this translation so much.
It's so good. That's like the actual. It's not the Du De Ching version of it. It's the Dao De Ching.
Yeah.
That he translated. I know it's so good. It's very fun.
I was about to say, Oliver Benjamin, a truly gifted writer there.
And that's the thing. It's like, I mean, some of the parables that you see kind of attached to Taoism might seem overly simplistic, but it's kind of like any good like Aesop's fable type thing. You know, the overly simplistic ones are often the ones with the deepest
concepts.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. I was about to say, here we go for a little bit of Foley work.
Yeah, I'm excited about this one, man.
Yeah, no. So just for the listeners at home, I am now pouring a very highly anticipated glass of Institution Ales Triple IPA, the name of which I will retrieve whenever I'm not handling the can.
This is our podcast within a podcast. It's kind of like an offshoot, I guess, of your other podcast, really.
Yeah, the one that's not really going on right now.
It still exists.
It still exists. So this is going to be the Batch 300 Triple IPA, Institution Ale being a local brewery up in Camarillo here. Everybody should check them out. They're fucking awesome. Yeah. This was literally canned 13 days ago.
Nice.
Which means that I bought it a week ago. But, and let's see what we got here. 10.3% alcohol, 85 IBUs. For anybody who's wondering what IBU means, go listen to my episode on hops on Good Libations.
Yes. Another podcast on Unit 24 Productions.
On Unit 24 Productions. Blobbity, blobbity, blah. All right, so.
That looks lovely.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's just fucking delicious. All right. Back to the Tao.
Right.
I was really interested to kind of, dive into the history of this whole concept, mostly because I was very interested in the fact that the Tao is actually described by most philosophers as the philosophical underpinnings of it are seen as a praxis rather than as like a true philosophical concept.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, because I mean, it's something that is meant. The underlying concepts of the Tao are meant to be practiced rather than analyzed so much, to speak. Okay. Again, like tying it in with the whole concept of Wu Wei, it is basically, in order to achieve oneness with the Tao, it is a system of observation and daily living that was practiced in ancient China, which actually went on to influence a lot of other philosophies at that time. The Tao was not actually exclusive to Taoism. It was actually embraced by Confucianism, which interprets Tao as the truth that leads to order both in society and life. Okay. You have... Well,
actually, quick note on that, because that's interesting. Confucianism, as I've always read, was kind of like the... it was kind of the other side of the coin to Taoism in a lot of ways.
We were talking about the yin and yang earlier.
Yeah, and it is kind of seen as more like rigid, and calling the Tao the truth makes a lot of sense in that context, right? Where you're talking about a more rigid philosophy that's seeking kind of like an absolute sort of like idealism, whereas Tao very much is against that. It embraces dualities, it embraces contradiction, it embraces all these other things, and that makes perfect sense, actually.
The Tao is in essence like a force of chaos in Taoism. Sort of. In Taoism, like it encourages the dualities.
Totally. Well, it makes sense why Confucianism would also embrace it, because, okay, so like look at it this way, and this is something I read about Taoism a while ago, but like if you're approaching life from these like series of observations and kind of like attempts to live in harmony with the Tao, but by doing that you're embracing dualities and you're really observing things closely and really kind of thinking through everything you're presented with, like that is a very kind of almost like scientific approach to life. And before like the scientific method or anything like that was really maybe a concept, this philosophy was encouraging people to look at things scientifically. And it kind of ties even better then into Confucianism, right? Because you're seeking like a scientific truth by way of this philosophy.
Yeah, that very structured sort of truth that, yeah.
Yeah, and again, yin yang, man, it fits so neatly into that idea, you know.
Zen Buddhists actually embrace the Tao as well. They actually see it as synonymous with Marga, which is the Buddhist path that leads to the result of walking the path of true Buddhism, which is the Eightfold Path promoted by Siddhartha Gautama, and eventually leads to true enlightenment.
Okay.
So basically, like a lot of these philosophies around this time just embraced the Tao. It's not. It's interesting that it's not exclusive to the religion that's named for it.
Totally, yeah. I mean, it's an incredibly influential idea, and these other religions use it as a tool, which is fascinating.
Yeah. That is very interesting to think about that, where, you know, Confucianism, it might be like a tool as opposed to like the central tenet of the philosophy,
which I think is a very like appealing way of looking at it too. Like if you want something tangible, right? If you have a tangible goal, right, which Taoism would completely negate on its side of things, but if you wanted to apply it to a tangible goal, I mean, that's a very like interesting way of doing it.
Yeah.
Taoism
negating goals for roughly 2,500 years.
I love it. This is one thing I really do love about Taoism, though. It's just that like hard duality. Like, it's so because I just love that little element of chaos, man. It's wonderful.
Just nom 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 nom. Yeah, just eat up all that fucking just. Oh man, yeah. Everything is chaos. Be kind, to quote a very great woman.
Indeed.
But yeah, take it away. I know you've got some more stuff over here.
Well, let's see. On the topic of chaos, it's just a personal favorite saying of mine is, the universe trends towards entropy, so, might as well be good to each other.
Yeah.
So it's all going on that slow decline.
Yeah.
Which isn't interesting. I mean, decline maybe isn't the right word. It's not, but
yeah.
Anyway.
Eventually we'll reach equilibrium, I hope.
That is, I guess, the goal. One way or the other, we'll get there.
Yeah.
Which, again, is also kind of I like to think of it anyway, as a fairly, like, Taoist mentality. I think a lot of people I know think of it when I say stuff like that, I think they think I'm being fairly pessimistic. And I can be pessimistic at times, but I consider that particular statement fairly neutral.
Yeah.
But yeah, so one other note I made here was Tao Te Ching chapter 14. I just had this like note as I was like ripping through the Tao Te Ching earlier. But
just the phrase "ripping through the Tao Te Ching" is
so part of Tao Te Ching chapter 14 is it says it being the Tao is neither light nor dark, high nor low, up nor down. Rather, its process refigures the very division of opposites, and thus it is impossible to define. And that actually reminded me. It kind of takes me back to my upbringing. That sounded very Alpha Omega to me. Like. It sounds very similar to that.
Yeah, no, I do. I agree. I was raised Baptist, so yeah, I kind of have that same little underpinning.
Yeah. It's interesting just to...
Hadn't made that connection.
A little bit of a permeation, But yeah, but in, I think, even more of a sense, like, if anything, if you're going to tie this to Christianity, I almost feel like you're a little bit closer maybe to, like, the Old Testament God, in a way, because it's more chaotic, more sort of like, I mean, not the wrathful side of things, but more chaotic sort of indifference to his fickle might be the right word. But again, it kind of it's not a very good comparison. I am very hesitant to tie this to classic Christianity in any way.
Technically, I guess the Old Testament God is not classic Christianity.
Well, in that regard, I guess, we're talking about Judaism by and large, but
another thing that I kind of love that I read, I actually got this from the BBC has a wonderful section on their website devoted to various religions.
Oh yeah, it's a good primer.
It's a very good primer, but they actually quote the Shuangzi, which says, "The way is to man as rivers and lakes are to fish, the natural condition of life." And we go through a lot of the Tao Te Ching on this podcast, but I think that might be one of the most like concise ways that I could actually talk about the Tao. It is literally everything. It is the natural condition of life and everything that surrounds us, and it is the natural world.
Yeah, it's simplicity, it's nature, it's everything you observe. It informs the decisions that people make, whether they see it or not. Feel it or
whether
not,
they realize
it.
it or understand it. It informs everything around us.
Yeah, and I mean, if you really start tearing things down to kind of their more natural components, I mean, you can talk about people's decisions in terms of like their biology. You can talk about people's decisions in terms of their influences around them, like their kind of environmental influences. I think these are all just sort of ways of talking about this.
Indeed.
So
indeed.
Yeah, and again, it's a philosophy that encourages, again, scientific thought, a kind of a dissection of what you are presented with and what you observe. So,
agreed.
Yeah. I made a list here. I actually went down all the chapters that I found on that spoke directly to the Tao. Again, shout out to Taoistic.com for giving kind of good topical breakdowns of the Tao Te Ching.
Exactly.
And I went right down the list, but I mean, so many of them are kind of along the same veins. Like, there's looking at things like good and bad and duality, and not looking at one or the other as absolute. But always kind of shifting. That's Tao Te Ching chapter 34. Kind of like this overarching sense of humility, when you're talking about the Tao. And again, kind of what you just quoted as far as like a fish living in a river or a lake. Mm-hmm. Like, the fish doesn't think about that kind of thing. It's humble. It doesn't know. It doesn't think about it in terms of in that way. It just is.
Yeah, so, it just exists within that reality.
Yeah, and when it tries, and if that fish tries to go against that, then it meets with considerable amount of resistance. Again, back to the Wu Wei concept. These are intertwined. You can't really speak about one without the other.
Salmon are definitely not Taoists.
No. but they're acting within their nature, so they really are. And again,
I guess that's true.
And there's the duality.
Boy.
And that's the fun of it, man. That's really the fun of it.
I don't really have anything else to add right this minute. I just wanted to leave. I was kind of hoping to leave off with this quote because I love this so much, and this is a chapter from the Tao Te Ching.
Sure.
So this is a little bit of a different translation because this is not coming from Oliver Benjamin.
This is BBC.
This is BBC. Which may not be as clever, but
pretty good though.
So this particular reading states, "There was something undifferentiated and yet complete, which existed before heaven and earth. Soundless and formless, it depends on nothing and does not change. It operates everywhere and is free from danger. It may be considered the mother of the universe. I do not know its name. I call it Tao."
Yeah, perfect. I think that's Tao Te Ching chapter 1, actually. I think that's the first chapter.
I believe you're correct.
It's simplicity, but also immense complexity. The wonderful dualities of Tao.
The wonderful dualities of Tao, indeed.
So, I'm going to get a little Foley work in here because I need another one of these open. But
very nice. You got that little like
thud. Yeah. I'm drinking Torpedo IPA from Sierra Nevada. Highly recommend.
Highly recommended as well.
So I don't know if there's much else we can really blather on about here,
I mean, I could certainly blather, but I don't think it would serve any purpose at this point.
Yeah, well, I mean, if there's one thing I think that, I would want to encourage people to do is, if you want to know more about this and also probably confuse yourself more, look these things. I mean, you can find this for free online. We've been talking about a lot of web resources. You don't need to buy the book. If you're inclined to get a physical copy of the Tao Te Ching, patronize your local library and grab a copy.
Indeed, patronize your local library. Another website that you can look up is personaltao.com.
Very good.
A wonderful website that breaks everything down into some very accessible essays by the writers at that website. Again, the BBC Religions section is lovely for anybody who's interested in delving into the basics. Also, a number of very nice Audible productions. Audible.com. You can get some inexpensive primers on Taoism as well.
Or get them for free from your public library.
But if you want to own them, you can also
do that.
You can also get them from Audible.
Audible is a good service. I'm loath. I don't want to talk bad on them, but at the same time, like at least where we are, and a lot of public libraries are getting on board with these sort of like podcasting service, or not podcast, but audiobook services. So
yeah, no, it's wonderful.
I've been using it a lot
as
so.
An actual librarian and a former librarian, we both encourage everybody to go out and patronize their public libraries.
Indeed. But yeah, look into Tao. And look, if you want to talk to us about it too, like we're by no means like experts, but we'd be happy to talk to people.
Yeah, no, you want to engage. I would love to talk to everybody about, what I've managed to glean over the last like 10 years or so.
Yeah, what little kind of like nuggets of knowledge I've been able to pick up along the way, those sweet nugs.
Yeah, them sweet. Yeah, I was about to say, boy, man, we are really into the whole sweet nugs thing.
We really are.
That's really a central tenet to our philosophy in life.
Yeah, we've latched on pretty hard. But okay, I think we're probably safe to move on then. At this point.
Yeah, I think we can transition into getting to the do to the matter.
Yeah, so getting to the do the matter this week. Musical flair. I'm not gonna ever try to sing again. But yeah, so we're gonna talk.
Kind of getting back into it.
Yeah,
it's been a while.
Just easing in.
Yeah.
So this one fell to me this week, and I found a really good story actually, which I'm really excited about. You may have seen this before.
Just saw the headline.
Just
I'm
saw
like,
the headline.
Yes.
So this was from NPR. It's only from a day ago. It's actually from the 29th of July. The headline reads, "To keep women from dying in childbirth, look to California." So kind of the background.
West Coast, best coast.
Hashtag West Coast, best coast. But yeah, so the background of this story is that there has been this kind of growing trend in the U.S. in particular over the last few decades. Really, it goes back to the late '60s, early '70s, where mortality rates among mothers in childbirth have been rising over time to the point where the statistics had gotten downright chilling in the U.S. Where we're talking, I think it's still fairly low probability, but it's more common
comparatively.
But it's more common than it ever should be, and compared to other major kind of Western countries, it's remarkably high.
Canada,
the Netherlands,
UK,
and a number of kind of really fairly
people with good public health care.
Generally speaking. But so what's interesting is this story spoke to me on a number of levels because I think it's an absolutely tragic trend. But the interesting thing to me was the reason why this started to become a trend. And the reason this started happening was kind of twofold. So interestingly, kind of going into the 60s, modern medicine, their main goal when it came to childbirth and mortality was infant mortality. The main goal of medicine was to prevent as best as possible infant mortality.
Yeah.
And we made some great strides, kind of by and large, as a species, on this front. At least in the Western world.
Medically speaking, on infant mortality, we've done some pretty good work.
Yeah, and but to the point where I think it was the American the AMA or it was the AMA, the American Medical Association in 1950 declared the battle won essentially.
Womp womp.
And as a result, the emphasis really didn't have anywhere to go. People weren't focused on any particular thing, so trying to prevent mothers from dying in labor basically just went to the wayside as a result of this declaration of victory over infant mortality. And to, again, kind of chilling results. And so what the kind of reversal of the trend here in California, what's been happening, there was a handful of doctors, one in particular who they talk about in this article fairly extensively, who works out in Eastern California. I'm looking for her name. She works at Pomona Valley Hospital Medical Center, which is actually very close to where I grew up. And this doctor, I believe her last name is Maine. there's a few different people here. Marian Helen Rodriguez is another doctor cited in this article. But what they were doing is they were looking at like, okay, so like what are the two main causes of women dying in childbirth? And it came down to a couple things that were kind of the primary factors. One was hemorrhaging after childbirth, which is chilling to think about. But
like I literally just that was not a put on. That was a literal like chill just ran down my spine thinking about that.
Yeah, and it's a hard thing to kind of think about sometimes. But the other thing was as a result of an increased prevalence of C-sections, there's it's called a placenta accretia. It's scar tissue that basically forms after a C-section. If you have multiple C-sections, it increases the risk of this, and it can also lead to hemorrhaging. There's other complications that can occur. So it's a couple of issues that really like have been well known by medicine for a long time. And these doctors kind of isolated these kind of 2 or 3 kind of like main causes of mortality. And what they essentially did, it's a really smart idea, and I'm surprised no one had thought of it before. They essentially created crash carts to go with childbirth. It's literally like a cart that they bring into the room, and it has kind of all the tools necessary to save a life, essentially, if one of these things happens to occur. And the reversal of mortalities, again, as the headline says, or as the headline indicates, it's been like 50%. Like, it has been a 50% improvement.
Shit.
Like, just that alone, being prepared and training people for the probability of these, or the possibility of these things.
That is insane.
So, like, California is, like, blazing a trail, and it's such a simple solution.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a basic idea. But what's interesting about this article, they actually highlight one particular mother who had multiple C-sections and had gotten elevated risk for one of these complications. And she's from Apple Valley, California, and she ended up in Pomona for this thing. And, I mean, that's my hometown, Apple Valley. So, like, this is a story, like, and I've always known there's been a big medical industry out in that part of California. So it really doesn't surprise me that the people who are kind of blazing the trail on this one are out in the Inland Empire. But they're really doing phenomenal work. It seems like such a basic idea. I can only hope that, medical practitioners around the country are going to adopt this like, this practice. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I mean, just it's interesting to think about because, I mean, I've thought about this a lot with like the debates about, like abortion and, unwanted pregnancies and rape and things like that. It's like this country tends to focus exclusively on the child and not on the mother. Mm-hmm. And I've got news for everybody out there. The mothers are people too. We kind of have to take care of them.
Yeah, totally.
And so, yeah, it's kind of amazing to think that, something so simple could, preserve so many lives.
Yeah.
For these women, and it's good to know that I'm living in the state that's really trailblazing seems like a really bold term here to apply to something that should be, when you think about it, applied just as a basic precaution.
Yeah, I mean, it seems so simple, right? Like,
yeah.
Why was this not the case? And
it's truly baffling to think about the fact that this was not already being implemented in hospitals, across the nation.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling to me. But again, to the kind of the dude of the matter, I mean, what is more dudely? You're actively saving lives that like should not be lost for any reason.
We spent a long time last week talking about compassion mm-hmm. and empathy, and I believe this kind of ties back in to the fact that these doctors have the empathy to know that like we have to be just as concerned about this mother as we do about this infant.
Absolutely. All parties involved, and empathy to realize that there is a major shortcoming of one of many major shortcomings of the medical field as a whole and healthcare in general in this country. Like, and if it's as simple as putting a fucking like birth crash cart in the room, like easy done, man. Like easy done. Like do it.
Yeah.
Train your staff. Just do the thing. Like this isn't going to cost an arm and a leg. Just do it.
Just do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Nike. Just do it.
Dudism. Just do it.
So, but that's what I have. It's a great story, and
it is wonderful. Yeah. And to the doctors out in Pomona?
Pomona.
Pomona. Yeah. Okay. I almost said Paloma, and then I went, oh no, that's a character in the Adventure Zone.
That is very different. Paloma's very different. Pomona. Pomona, if you're not familiar with California, in terms of like geography, is about an hour east of Los Angeles. So.
Yeah. I think I might have driven through there on my way out here.
Yeah, I mean most people drive through.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of big but if you're talking to kind of Inland Empire generally, I mean you've got a couple of really big medical centers. Loma Linda is a big one. UCR I think just finished its medical center. So there's a lot. I mean it's one of the biggest industries out there to my knowledge, aside from like shipping and stuff like that. So
interesting.
It's a big one. The community college up in my hometown has an incredible nursing program. People come from all over to go to that nursing program. So yeah, that's an industry out there for sure. So
fucking A, man.
Yeah,
rad.
Good on him.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
All the good people of Pomona saving lives.
Yeah, man. One mother at a time at this point.
One mother at a time. Yeah. So if you're expecting, come to Pomona, I guess.
It seems like a good place to be. But I guess that kind of brings us around to the end. I guess we should talk a little bit of housekeeping.
Yep. So feel free to reach out to us. We can be reached at Gmail at pddcast@gmail.com. That is pddcast at gmail.com. I'm really in the weeds on my alcohol at this point in the evening, so I want to make sure I'm enunciating.
Yeah, and I mean, like I'm a notorious mumbler, so I usually try to be very clear when I say these things.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm the guy who says salsa like with a Z instead of salsa. You know,
I've never noticed that before.
Yeah,
you better believe I'm going to be paying attention next time we go to Tacos Manzano.
This is the truth. This is the truth that has been pointed out to me on multiple occasions. But if you'd like to get at me about my pronunciation, you can also reach us on Facebook. That's facebook.com/PDDcast.
And also on Twitter at PDDcast.
Yeah, we're on all that social media.
We're very consistent about how you can get a hold of us.
We aim for consistency of branding when putting together this very relaxed podcast.
We are proudly members of the Unit 24 Productions family, and so we should be seeing the drop of my new podcast, Zone of the Unknown.
Yes, I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, I know I've been talking about it for like fucking ever, but I'm actually gonna do it. My goal is to like have it done very, very quickly here.
I'm excited, man. Yeah, it's you and our friend Jose talking about cryptids and all that good shit.
Mysteries and ghosts and all that good shit.
Dude, I'm pumped, man.
It's pretty entertaining, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, man.
Also check out Your Favorite's Problematic with Liz and Kristen.
Yep.
And you can check out back episodes of Good Libations and Get Off My Lawn. So yeah, just feel free to come and join us in case you're, just have some weird desire to listen to me talk some more. And not going to judge. I appreciate the attention.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, look, we're happy to introduce you to the fun things on those podcasts as well. Alcohol and crotchety old man stuff and all that good shit.
Well, that just defined my life.
Sure. So we mentioned last episode we're going to be at PodCon this coming year.
Yep.
We're probably going to keep talking about it because we both love it. It's a really fun convention up in Seattle, Washington.
Seriously, if you are thinking about making a podcast, if you just love podcasts, you got to come to PodCon.
Yeah, check it out, man. I mean, we're not being paid to advertise, man. We just both really love it.
Yeah, so. I mean, it was one of the best experiences I've had in a long time last December.
Yeah, it's one of the best cons I've ever been to, just straight up.
Indeed, and I didn't get sick while I was there, which
that's a win.
I didn't get con plague, so that was a win.
I feel like there wasn't much con plague at this particular event. It was relatively small, being the first year last year.
Yeah, but there were still quite a few people there.
Yeah, it was a good turnout. I expect this will probably be bigger. You know.
Oh, I anticipate it.
I would not think otherwise.
Yeah, no. So by all means, come and join us at PodCon. I'm thinking that one of the days I might try to try to put a group together to do like a little meditation session while we're out there, like first thing in the morning. So,
I could totally dig that. Yeah.
Yeah, like meet somewhere close to a place where we can all get breakfast and hang out and chat, and then go find a little quiet space where we can all just relax and get ready for the day to come.
Yeah, bring your rug.
Bring your rug and bring your robe, and we'll all just have a good chill old time.
Yeah, a little dudist meetup. That also, we should also mention then, speaking of the chill of it all, our music, which is 2 p.m. Wake Up Call by Apache Tomcat. It's off the album Classics by Request. They are super chill and fun. There's some good punk rock. There's some good surf rock. Check them out, man. God
damn if I don't love this band.
Yeah.
They've quickly become one of my favorites in the year that I've known about them. Yeah, so everybody check out Apache Tomcat.
Yeah, show them some love, man. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
I think we covered it all.
All right. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap her up then. Thanks for joining us on our episode on Dow. I think we're gonna have to cover Tay at some point too. Which is
definitely.
That's gonna be a companion to this one, probably.
Yeah, so. It'll be very quickly coming on the heels of this episode, I think.
Yeah. So I guess until we meet again, dudes.
Fuck it, dude.
Fuck it.
Let's go bowling.
Yeah, man. Let's go.
Ooh, nice resonance there.
That was really good. I picked up this.